Okay, hi guys, and welcome back to another review. This time we have the quite incredible Fiio FH7. Fiio are a brand that I never really got on with. I think that the original sort of players, amps and DAPs were kind of terrible sounding. They had a lot of features, but there was something that just never sounded good to me about them. They were kind of cold and boring sounding. But they are one of the, along with Duna, one of the original OG Chi-Fi companies, and they're one that sort of looks to expand that price to value proposition. The FH7, I believe at the time it was released, was their flagship and may well be. I don't do a lot of reading about this stuff, I just like to put out my thoughts on it. I've got them repackaged in the box just now. You can see it's a little bit beaten up. But we're going to go through the unboxing while I talk about the earphones, just so that you don't have to look at me just holding them like I do in a lot of the other reviews. So this is the box. You get the earphones. You can see they're very pretty on the outside, and it's just very simple packaging, very high quality, simple packaging. It's a nice presentation box here. Really good quality cardboard, and it's got a sort of textile leather finish on the outside of it. And there you go. There is the earphones, the Fiio FH7. You have the earphones here, cable, which we'll get into, and this is the filter tips that they come with, which I'll also get into in the sound portion of this review. Now you can see Fiio has really stepped up their game in the presentation and the accessories department. You have spin fit tips, you have balance tips, you have memory foam tips, you have bi-flange tips, you have tips that are focused towards vocals and other tips that are focused towards bass. And you can see that the difference, for example, in the vocal and the bass, is that the actual flange is kind of thinner on the vocal one and it's thicker on the bass one. And the silicone's kind of thinner on the outside there, but thicker on the outside here and stiffer. So whatever they've done, they've kind of worked on offering you multiple different tuning options, including this packet of little filter tips. I'll go ahead and take the case out. Case is really, really nice. Fiio branding on the outside, leather style finish, and it's a little flip top version. And they actually give you two cases, a little soft carry case, generic style, and this more premium finish with a sort of nice lining on the inside, and the little shelf that you can keep some extra ear tips in. This one on the inside here, we just have a little cleaning tool and a little, this is their version of the shirt clip. So you kind of like put that into your shirt and then the cable over the top there. So some nice little touches. It shows that Fiio are thinking about what their customers might like and not just throwing in a bunch of generic nonsense that a lot of companies do. So I'm going to take this box thing off and I'm going to take them back out the packaging, which is always frustrating because it takes me so long to get it all back in and make it look original. So let's first of all, let's look at the cable. We're going to go over build quality first, and then I think we'll probably go into the sound performance, and then into what other earphones are sort of comparable at this price point. So the cable on this is fantastic, absolutely excellent job done by Fiio here, and this is at a time when a lot of Asian companies are producing some fantastic quality earphone cables, and this one is very nice. It has a tiny little bit of stiffness, but not a lot of memory retention. So that means that it doesn't retain memory, it doesn't tangle easy, but it doesn't flow maybe as easily as something like the Linso Euphrosyne or the some of the Fearless audio cables that we've got just now. This is terminated in a standard 3.5mm right angle jack with metal hardware, gold plating, and nice little strain relief on it there. You have the little Fiio cable tie, and if we go up to the middle, it's actually an octo braid silver wire. that splits into a quad braid past the splitter. So there's 4 lines here, and then there's 2 sets of, there's 8 lines here, and then there's 2 sets of 4 lines above the splitter. It's a very strong, very well made cable. You have the Fiio branded splitter here and a metal cable cinch or slider, whatever you want to call it. Of course, up at the top you get the memory loops at the top, and then it is terminated in a MMCX connector, which is of course my preference over a 2-pin. Some people might still like 2-pin. I prefer MMCX, so I'm happy to see it included here. Fantastic cable. This earphone, remember, is $450, and the other one at $450 is the Duno DK3001 Pro, which comes with a sort of toned down version of the Duno Hulk cable with the adaptable terminations. So just know that if you're someone like me who predominantly now listens to their music in a 4.4mm balance or 2.5mm balance, you're going to need to get a aftermarket cable, and in that case something like the Linso Blue cable that we have a review of is a perfectly suitable alternative for that task. Fantastic cable, really like it. So let's disconnect the other earphone and we will talk about the build quality. Now, as I say, when this was released, and I believe it still is, maybe it's not anymore, maybe there's an FH9 or something like that, I'll just rank it on its merits. This is a gorgeous set of headphones. This is just beautiful. It's really, really well done. It's really tastefully done. It's finished at an extremely high standard. Everything about this, to me, screams a premium earphone, and they just look super, super classy in the ear. All metal construction, it's cool to the touch. It's quite a big housing. It has, as I say, it's a five driver hybrid earphone with a large dynamic driver where you can see the venting port here. Metal tips on it, which is excellent. It's got a nice lip on it to stop the ear tips coming off. It has excellent ergonomic design, which is going to let it sit in your tragus and anti-tragus. Down at the bottom, it's just going to sit in your ear nicely. It's not as low profile as some of the other earphones. It does tend to, I have medium ears, and it does stick out a few millimeters away from my head. So it's quite a large body, and it's a fairly heavy earphone as well. But because you're wearing it with the cable looped over the ear, you have no problem with microphonics. You have no problem with them being pulled out in the same way that you would if the cable was going straight down. So yeah, huge fan of the actual ergonomic design and the aesthetic design on this earphone. I think it looks premium, and it costs about half of other premium earphones. I'm not going to say it's comparable to something as beautiful as the Campfire Audio Solaris, but you gotta admit it's not far off. It's just yeah, it's really nice. So in terms of sound, as I say, I don't like Fiio products that much. I don't really rate them too highly, but these sound really good. I really like these. They're not an overdone. They're not an over the top. Got a little spider running about here. They're not an over the top earphone. They're fairly neutral and well balanced, but they have a really good ability to extend deep into each range. So that means that they perform right in the middle. They're very well behaved. They have excellent detail retrieval. They don't stray into sibilance, or they don't stray into boominess, but when called upon, if you're listening to something with EDM, all of a sudden something where a lot of earphones that are bass focused will sound bass focused from when you're listening to, say, classic rock. You'll still be like, oh, there's a little bit too much on the bass there. This will do great with something like classic rock, and then you turn it up to like EDM or rap, hip hop, that sort of stuff, and it shows its ability to go with that music and extend deep, and to the point that it does actually have, I would say, sufficient low-end sub-bass response. It's not a bass head earphone, but it does have ability to bring really solid rumble, and at the same time, it's not a sibilant earphone by any means. It's not high focused earphone. It does have a slight extension into the upper mid range, but they stay perfectly tame. And then if you're going to listen to, like, say, for some jazz or something like that with some flute or a lot of hi-hats and stuff like that, it goes with the music again, and it extends into the upper range. So it's like you don't know it's there when it's not meant to be there, and then when it's called upon, it'll move itself in. I think that's a sign of a good earphone. It's one that's versatile. It can be used with a lot of genres of music, and it performs really, really well. Bass, as I say, amazing texture. It's not just a boom boom bass. It's got layers. It's got texture to it. It's got levels to it. There's solid separation between the upper bass and down into the sub bass, and there's very little bleed over. In fact, there's zero bleed into the lower mid range. The mid-range is slightly more leaning towards the upper end of the mid-range, which brings a sort of nice energy to your music. Again, it doesn't go sibilant, but this makes it sound specifically good with female vocals or higher frequency acoustic instrumentation and stuff like that, or with jazz music, violins, sort of like if you listen to Vanessa Mae or something like that, like these absolutely bang, because they also have that upper mid-range combined with the extension into the treble creates a really nice soundstage and open presence, and they have fantastic imaging in the mid-range, which allows you to distinctly place like the different instrumentation and have like a real clarity between different elements of the music that you're listening to. As I say, rock, pop, classical, all very, very good. EDM and bass, perfectly capable of it. I like to have two different earphones. I like to have something like this, and then I like to have like a specific low-end earphone. Warmth-wise, they're not super warm, but there's a tiny little hint on the lower mids and the bass that so it takes that edge off it and makes it a very, very pleasing earphone to listen to. And the highs are just the easiest way to describe the highs are they have superb extension, but good smoothness. So they don't get overly bright. They're very pleasant to listen to over long periods of time, but they do a fantastic job at displaying that treble emphasis soundstage. They are just a fantastic all-around earphone. Now, if we're going to talk about like what else you can get for this sort of money, I would say $450. Should you consider them? Yes, absolutely consider them. But they're not going to be they're not going to be something where I say like, oh, this $450 earphone sounds like a $700 earphone. Because when you look at the chi-fi market, you get to a $700 earphone, you're like, oh, this sounds like a $1,000 earphone. So, for example, like if you're wanting something a little bit down from the Fearless Audio S8P, you don't want to spend $550, $600 on an S8P or S8F. Fantastic alternative. The Duno DK3001 Pro, Personally, I would take these, but I would factor in that I'm probably going to need to buy another cable, so I'm probably going to be another $100 on the cable to bring it up to the DK3001 standard. And then you have like a few earphones, like again, Tin Hi-Fi P1, I think compete with these. That's going to drive people crazy. But I still rate the tins, but then the tins need a really good source to work with. On that subject, the source pairing of this, I would say that you want to use something neutral to warm or lush sounding. I switched out the amp unit in this, and also the Dethon Ray H1 sounds fantastic with this, whereas the Shanling M6 Pro sounds a little bit too cold without, you know, it just sounds like a little bit too much in the cool and neutral direction, whereas I think these really benefit from being used with something like the Dethon Ray H1. In fact, this and this together was a marvellous combination, and this as well. Just bringing out the sound stage, and just really solid performing earphones. I personally love them, and I think if this is the direction that Fiio are going in, then I can only highly recommend them to people. Great looking earphone, very comfortable, excellent accessories. One last thing, we should probably talk about the, if I can get them out of this packaging just now, the little adapters. So you get this little pill case, and you unscrew it, and you get these little filter tips which increase the treble. I just tend to leave it just on the neutral setting. They do exactly what you would expect them to do. Like the bass one gives a little bit more bass, the treble gives a little more treble. I find that I can get that sort of thing from just EQing. I'm not the sort of person that is going to walk about with a set of filter tips and change them out every time that I'm going to listen to something specific. I'll just stick in the neutral ones most of the time, and as easy as this is, it's just something else that can get lost for me. So it's a nice touch, and what I would say to you is find the one that you like to set up with, listen to it for a few days, and then just stick with it, and then use the EQ as per your own requirements. But there you go, I've gone on too long yet again, but another fantastic earphone, Fiio FH7. Got a bunch more reviews coming up, and yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.